2020 and 2019 brought us two new super spinners, a new Daiwa Saltiga and a new Shimano Stella, into the fishing world. In today's video, we're going over whether the Saltiga Expedition made in 2014 is still worth using today. What's going on, everyone? My name is Ryan, aka Juno Ryan, and in today's video I'm giving you all my thoughts on the 2014 Daiwa Expedition. This particular model is the 5500H, but this review will absolutely suffice for the 8000 model as well. The Daiwa Expedition is in a class that we'll describe as super spinners, competing with the likes of the Shimano Stella, the Penn Torque, the Okuma Makaira, and depending on who you talk to, things like a Van Staal or a Zeebaas. The way I like to describe this reel is it's kind of like the Ford Raptor of the fishing world. Does it look cool? Yes. Does it fish well? Absolutely. It does anything that you need it to do. It absolutely performs when you need it to perform. Is it necessary to get the job done? No. You can absolutely find something for 1/3 of the price that will get the job done most of the time. There's very few instances, very few applications that you need a class of reel like this. It's really a premium product that you don't recommend to the average angler. Throughout the video, I'll dive into the components, we'll talk about the fishability, I'll talk about my opinion of the appearance, and at the very end of the video, I'll give my overall assessment on whether or not I would recommend this reel in 2020 or 2020 and beyond to someone that's interested in it. We'll just start from the top and work our way down, starting with the drag knob. The drag knob is fully machined aluminum drag knob, and this thing dissipates heat in a way that I've never really seen in a reel. At first I started using it and I was kind of blown away because it would be very hot to the touch, and after doing a little bit of research, after doing a little bit of digging, I realized it's because of the way this reel is designed. It actually is trying to get heat away from the drag washers as fast as possible, so it does a very good job of it. Daiwa uses a spring in the drag cap that competes with Shimano's patented wave spring that gives you an absolutely consistent and silky smooth drag pressure throughout. The carbon fiber drag washers within the drag stack last very long and give you right around 33 pounds, 15 kilograms of pressure, which is way more than you need in a reel of this class. The bigger reel, the 8000, will actually give you right around something like 70 pounds, like 30 kilograms of drag pressure, which is just absolutely redonkulous for a spinning reel, guys. I'll tell you the maximum that I'd probably ever fish this reel at is about 20 pounds. And that's for very few applications and for a very short amount of time. It's just ridiculous the amount of drag pressure they can put into spinning reels these days. Don't listen to random guys you see online that say they fish 25 pounds of drag all day long. They're crazy. They're absolutely, they're lying. I've handed this reel to a lot of my good fishing buddies or guys that I just know within the industry while it was mounted on a rod. And I grabbed the lure or the hook or whatever was on the end of the line and walked backwards. And I told them to keep tightening and keep tightening and keep tightening the drag. And every single one didn't reach the maximum capacity of the reel, and they were just blown away by how much drag, how silky smooth it was, and how consistent it came off the reel. They were just absolutely blown away. And guys, these aren't normal fishermen. These are guys that are absolute slayers that do it day in, day out, fishing guides, guys that work in tackle shops, guys that are just in the industry, and they're blown away by the capabilities of a reel in this class. So I can't imagine holding on to like 40 pounds of drag or 50 pounds of drag put out by some of these super spinners nowadays. Overall, the drag is up there with the best I've ever used. I think it might be a little bit better than the Shimano Stella. Only thing that the Daiwa really isn't doing as well as a Stella in this aspect is just the sound. We'll let you guys hear it. Kind of wimpy. Honestly, Stellas and other high-end reels that I've used, they really ring. They kind of sing at you, and it's just a very satisfying sound when a fish is just taking a long, crazy run. It's just an awesome thing to hear. It doesn't affect the fishability of it, and I'm sure some people like this sound a little bit more, so I won't let that come into my overall rating. And overall, I'm gonna give the drag a 9.8 out of 10. It's just as good as I've ever used. I don't really ever see a need for needing anything other than this, to tell you the truth. The main shaft is stainless steel, and it puts up with the ridiculous amount of drag pressure, so absolutely no problems there at all. The spool itself, I think, is amazing to look at. It holds right around, on this reel, I believe I fit 300 meters of PE5. Now, if you want to use Freedom units, that's about 65-pound braid, and I fit around 300 yards, a little bit over 300 yards on here. My only complaint really about the spool itself is it doesn't have that nice lip that Shimano is going to, and they actually went to that in the 2020 model, so I'd be interested to see the difference. But it doesn't affect the castability in my opinion and in my experience, but what it does is it doesn't really allow you to overspool the reel at all, which really shouldn't be a knock, but I've found that the reels with that angled lip like on a Shimano Stella really perform a little bit better, and you can pack a little bit more line on there. When I overspooled this reel, it was like an instant win knot. It was like 10 casts in and I got a win knot, so it's okay. I mean, it fishes how it's supposed to and it does the job it's supposed to, but overall, I'll give the spool and shaft, I'll give that an 8 out of 10. Moving on to the bail and the line roller. The bail itself is stainless steel and it's hollow. Very strong. I have zero problems with the design of it. Other reels will use a thinner bail. I think this one looks very aesthetically pleasing for the size of the reel. The line roller itself has a mag sealed bearing in there, and it does a very, very good job of keeping water out. I'll get into what mag seals are when I move on to the body, and there's a very important note about mag seal. So if you're about to click off the video and buy one of these, you might want to wait for that next portion of the video. Very few reports online of people having struggled with the line roller or people struggling with the line roller, and that just is when it gets loud, and realistically those are just guys that don't take care of their reels. They don't service them when they need to be serviced. They probably just fish it until it is absolutely broken. Everything needs a service, even the most high grade gear. The bail flip feels great to me. It's very intuitive, so I've used other, even in high-end spinners, and when you bring it to a certain degree, you'll think you're there, and it'll leave you to basically it'll make you basically half cock the bail. So you think it's open all the way, you go to cast and boom, the bail closes on you, which is really not what you want. The intuitive feel of this is there's no catches at all, and the flip is very solid. Overall, bail and line roller, I'm gonna give a 9 out of 10. Moving our way down the reel to the body. On the rotor, Daiwa uses a composite material that they describe as Zion, or they have it named Zion. It's realistically just a very strong composite. Shimano's version they call CI4. You may be a little bit more familiar with that. But for all intents and purposes, it's very strong and it removes a lot of weight. I used to not be a fan of these composite materials, but they've really grown on me and they've proven to be very reliable while also cutting weight. The bumper of the reel is a stainless steel that gives the reel a very premium feel to it. It's surrounded by a rubber seal or rubber gasket all the way around, and it does a great job of keeping salt water out. And if salt water does get in, there are little ports to allow the salt water to escape. The plates on the outside of the reel are machined aluminum, and they really are machined to a T. They do a great job of fitting to the internals, and it gives this reel a very solid feel, a very refined premium feel. The finish on the outside of the reel is my biggest complaint about the body. So there's a few areas basically on the reel foot, because I do take them on and off rods very constantly, and once or twice I believe someone's hooked something on here. It could have been me, could have been someone else, a buddy, but the finish comes off fairly easily, and really I haven't had this reel for that long, so it's kind of disappointing in a premium product that the finish comes off this easily. I've seen some horror stories online of salt water getting underneath and bubbling up the finish on the outside of Saltiga, so I really wish they would do a better job with that. Overall for the body, I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10, just because of that finish issue really brings it down for me. If the finish was fixed, it'd probably be around a 9 out of 10. Okay, getting back into it. Moving our way down to the body. Internal to the Saltiga and most of Daiwa's high-end market nowadays, they use what's called a mag seal. So they use mag sealed bearings, which I already talked about partially in the line roller. They use mag sealed bearings internal, and they use mag seals to protect the anti-reverse clutch system. Pretty much the whole clutch assembly is protected by what Daiwa describes as magnetic sealing. So essentially, Daiwa uses a combination of magnetic parts as well as a magnetic fluid to essentially remove the need for heavy-duty rubber seals. This magnetic fluid does a great job of creating an impenetrable barrier for water up to a certain pressure. With the right amount of pressure, water would still be able to creep its way through there, but it does a great job overall, and it allows you to dunk this reel a handful of times and fish it in some pretty harsh conditions. Now, I'll kind of explain to you guys exactly how it works specific to the bearings. So I'll use this roll of tape right here as kind of like a demonstration. Imagine this is a bearing. So on a normal ball bearing, you have your internal ring, you have your little steel balls, and then you have your outside ring. And it allows everything to spin really nicely. Those balls are out just for the elements to get them, and essentially salt water will get in there and corrode a pretty standard ball bearing. You have then what's called sealed or shielded bearings, where basically you have a wall protecting the outside of basically the outside of the bearing. The balls are shielded, protected by that metal piece. But you still have essentially small, tiny little gaps that salt water finds its way through, especially with the right amount of pressure. So what Daiwa has done fairly ingeniously is put magnets on the inside of that metal wall as well as on the bearings, and then filled the gaps with a magnetic fluid that essentially creates that impenetrable barrier. It's really an ingenious system, and it works very well to give you a very, very free spinning reel without heavy sealing, because essentially heavy sealing, if you've ever reeled something like a Van Staal that's just very robustly sealed, it gets very, very tight because rubber creates resistance. You can think about what rubber on metal is going to do. Even with very well engineered parts, you're still going to have some resistance. So that mag seal does a great job of that. I have one really important point about mag sealed reels. So if you're about to click off this video and go buy one, you might want to hang out for a minute or two. And that's the fact that you cannot buy the magnetic fluid yourself. Your local tackle shop can't buy the magnetic fluid. Really, the only way to get the magnetic fluid replaced in your seals as well as in your bearings is to send your reel to an authorized Daiwa service center. There's a couple third parties online that if you search Daiwa mag seal fluid, you will find, but proceed with caution there, because there are reports of people using those third parties versions and their reels seizing up after a couple of months. Tackle Advisors did a couple really good videos a few years ago where he went directly to the manufacturer and bought some ferro fluid. The company's name was Ferrotech, I believe, and he really, if you guys are interested on more on how mag seals work, he did a great breakdown and replaced the fluid himself. And it's actually fairly simple. However, you can no longer purchase that fluid directly from Ferrotech. That ship is sailed. So as the angler, you are left to sending your reel into Daiwa to have a full service done. Let's say I dropped this reel off the side of the boat. It fell down 20 feet to the bottom of the ocean. I swam down and got it, brought it back up. I would have to break it apart and essentially remove all of the salt water that was on the parts that got inside of the reel. I'd be screwed because I can't replace that magnetic fluid. I'd have to send it into Daiwa in order to get serviced, so I'd be without a reel. And if I had to fish the next day, I'd be completely out of a reel. I should be able to do it on my own. Now, I personally have never sent a reel into Daiwa in order to get it serviced. This is actually my first high-end Daiwa that I've ever owned, so I can't tell you guys from my experience what it's like dealing with their customer service department. Online, they don't have very good reviews compared to other high-end reel companies like Shimano. Shimano has really good reviews on their customer service when it comes to getting your high-end reel worked on. So take that for what you will. Do a little bit of research in regards to serviceability of the reel. Another big caution for you guys, if you have a mag sealed reel or you're taking apart a mag sealed reel, avoid getting any other oils or solvents or anything like that on the mag seals themselves, because it will taint that magnetic fluid and the bearings will no longer function as they're supposed to and likely corrode. For gearing, Daiwa uses a marine bronze main gear that's very strong, and it is machined to an absolute T. It is machined to perfection. So the tolerances within the reel are very, very minor. The pinion in the 5500 is a stainless steel pinion, and in the 8000 it's that same marine bronze, I believe. The thing with Daiwa gears is the way they make their gears, they're machined very, very precisely and very strong. However, they're very expensive. So the way they do gears is different than other companies. It leads to a very solid feeling that honestly, like, there's no play in the reel. Where there's definitely some, because mechanically it doesn't make any sense to have zero play, but you don't feel it as the end user. You don't feel any movement in the handle like you do with other premium reels. So it's just something that I'm a big fan of that Daiwa does. It's just, they're super finely machined, they're super accurately machined gearing. There is a backup anti-reverse, which in my opinion should absolutely be standard in any high-end super spinner. Pretty much, if we're using a Shimano scale, a 6,000 and up in a super spinner, I believe, should have a backup anti-reverse. Likely won't need it, but if you're paying this amount of money for a reel, you absolutely should have a 2 anti-reverse system. For me, I'm gonna rate the internals in 2 categories. In fishability, I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. It does great, it does everything that you want it to do. For serviceability, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10. It's a real deal breaker for me that you cannot work on your own reels. Especially these Daiwas, for a high-end reel, it's actually fairly simple inside, and if you were able to get that magnetic fluid, you'd really be able to do it all on your own. The handle, I love the simplicity of the design. It's jointless. You don't need an extra joint here to allow salt and other intrusions to come in. It's very simple screw on, and the ball itself is standard on both reels. So you don't have to go out and buy a replacement. I'm a big fan of the ball. I think it's super comfortable. Some guys are a fan of the more ergonomic, like that rubber grip that a lot of reels use, but I'm a big fan of the ball. Appearance-wise, in my opinion, this is probably the best looking spinning reel ever made. I'm just such a fan of all the little details that Daiwa went to in order to just make this reel happen. Just the blues accented with the silvers, the carbon fiber inserts in the spool, the overall design is just an elegant but also like futuristic looking reel that I'm a big fan of. Really the only reel that I think looks this cool is a Van Staal, just overall. I know beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but absolutely in a super spinner like this, I think they knocked it out of the park. Appearance, we're gonna go with a 9.5 out of 10. As for fishability, this reel casts well, it cranks heavy lures, it's very comfortable for heavy jigs and retrieving large fish. Fighting large fish, it gives you a pretty impressive amount of power for a high gear ratio reel. The gear ratio is a 5.71. However, even for a high gear ratio reel, it seems like you have a lot of cranking power. It seems like you have a lot of torque. It's very impressive and not what I expected in a high geared reel. There's sealing all around the outside, which allows you to fish it in fairly harsh conditions. I have fished it on the beach. I have kicked it in, kicked sand on it by accident. I have rinsed it back off and it fished fine. So the sealing allows you to fish it in some pretty freaking harsh conditions. So overall, for fishability, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Overall, this is one of the best, if not the best, spinning reel in this class that I've ever used. It does everything that you needed to do, and it's just such a well-machined, just well put together piece of fishing equipment. My overall rating is going to be a 9.3 out of 10 with an asterisk next to it, and that's because of the serviceability issue, which I've hit on a million times. I feel like the angler should be able to work on his own reel. I feel like he shouldn't have to send it in order to get service done. Overall recommendation, I would not recommend this reel to the average angler for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's a premium product, and I wouldn't recommend any super spinner to the average angler. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you can buy a reel for about a third of the price that accomplishes almost everything that this reel accomplishes. It gets the job done. This is a premium product. And number 2, would not recommend it because of the serviceability. I've hit on that a million times. So it's just a deal breaker for me, and I would not recommend it to most people. If you're someone that, you've always wanted one, you find a deal on it, absolutely, you can go out and get it, because this reel is not going to let you down fishing wise, at least within the first year, until you have to service it. But I digress. I'll tell you guys what, I'm really looking forward to reviewing the 2020 version of the Daiwa Saltiga and seeing really where they made changes and how it affects the overall fishability, because honestly, like, there's very few things that you could improve upon in this reel, and I think this one's way better looking than the new one. That's just my opinion. I can't tell you guys how lucky I feel to be able to even do review videos of reels like this. Me, when I was like 14 and I was seeing guys with really high-end reels, just blown away by how expensive they were, but how cool they were. I just really have a fascination with reels, and spinning reels in particular. So I just feel super lucky that I'm able to create videos like this for you guys and share my passion with really the rest of the world. It's just awesome, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Be on the lookout for some more fishing videos and some more review videos. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in that next video. Later.